Welcome to the Boulder Valley Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. I'm Brigida Vieira, the service associate today, and I also served as a delegate at the most recent General Assembly, the gathering of you congregations from across the nation. I am a white presenting cisgender young adult woman with long brown hair wearing a colorful dress. I just gave you an audio description of myself as a way to translate visual information into words to be as accessible as possible for the blind, visually impaired, and other listeners to today's service. Audio descriptions were modeled by the Unitarian Universalist Association, or UUA board, during General Assembly as one way to practice disability justice. Our mini service presenters today will be modeling this form of increased accessibility and inclusion during today's service. This morning, I am thrilled to be joined by Wendy Highsmith, Kelly Lojudice, Catherine Partridge, Nancy DeLaura, and Mary Gibb. Carmen Samdeem, the Church of the Larger Fellowship Choir, Dr. Glenn Thomas Ridehout, and Allison Hertz are providing our music today. And our tech usher, Deborah Mensch, is here to help make sure things run so smoothly. Our senior minister, Reverend Lydia Ferrante Roseberry, is on a much needed sabbatical through August 9th. And of course, all of you, this beautiful fellowship, and the wonderful people you are, you make our community vibrant and alive. Good morning. As I say the welcoming words today, I invite you to shift into that gallery mode where we all appear in our tiny boxes, if you haven't done so already, and scroll through the screen so you can experience the lovely diversity of this congregation, because without it and without you, there would be no us. You are all welcome here today. In all the beauty of languages, cultures, skin tones, shapes, and sizes that come together in your uniqueness, you are welcome here. In all the ways you experience and express gender, you are welcome here. In the beauty that is who you love and how you love, you are welcome here. In all the ways you make your living and the places you are from, you are welcome here. Christian, pagan, humanist, Jew, Buddhist, mystic, Muslim, Unitarian, Universalist, with all of the faith traditions that inform your spiritual life, you are welcome here today. No matter how long you are away, nor how soon you will return, you are welcome here. You are invited to join us with an open mind, a loving heart, and willing hands. We welcome you today. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all people. And we acknowledge that our community is located on the lands once stewarded by the Arapaho, Ute, Lakota, and Cheyenne people. This congregation honors Indigenous legacy and respects the enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional homelands through our connections to Right Relationship Boulder. We also acknowledge that we live in a time when Black, Indigenous, other people of color, BIPOC, and Latino, Latina, Latinx, and Hispanic people are devalued, violated, and killed because of systematic racism. We commit ourselves to becoming anti-racist in ourselves and in our institutions, and we do this by taking actions to dismantle racism in society, by taking guidance from while honoring the lived experience of those who identify as BIPOC and developing personal relationships between cultures. If you are new here, we are so glad you found us, and we hope that in this virtual community, you can experience the warmth and love of this congregation. Each Sunday is quite different here, so please do come back a few times to really get to know us. If you want to be better connected, please go to the chat window for the link to the first time visitors page, or you can email your information to our office manager, Carol, at officemanager@bvuuf.org. Her email address with more information is in the chat window. And please do check out our fellowship calendar and connections weekly for all the opportunities to stay involved. And finally, if any new visitors would like to introduce yourself, please do. We love to know who is among us. All are invited to stay for coffee hour and announcements after the service. And now we will light our chalice. If you have a chalice at home, you can light it with me as I light my worship chalice. So we know where all of our chalices are. Please write in the chat, chalice lit in with the name of your town. And I will say the word slowly so that you can follow along. We light this chalice for the warmth of love, the light of truth, and the energy of action. And now I'm going to ring our bowl again and invite it to draw you deeper into the present moment and into this, our beloved community.
I think it's just nerves.
Every June, Unitarian Universalists across the globe gather for General Assembly, a time to circle round in community. This year, member congregations assembled virtually for the second time. Boulder Valley had 17 participants attend. Here is a beautiful snapshot of some of our Boulder Valley GA attendees. Today, we share stories of the work happening at our association and in our larger UU community. We invite you to circle round in care and healing, to circle round for liberation and justice, and to circle round for love and courage as we live into our mission together.
Hi, I'm Kelly Lojudice, she, her, hers, a bisexual white middle-aged woman with blonde hair and round glasses and wearing a light blue shirt with a Progress Pride flag hung behind me. Circle round for freedom is both a commitment and a prayer. The diversity of our faith was so clear at the General Assembly, from worship services filled with Indigenous dancing, stories, and music, to celebrating the solstice with UU pagan rituals. I am always amazed by the broad tent our faith embraces. Despite our many differences, we are all connected by our 7 principles. Even when voting as your delegate on bylaw changes, we were affirming our principles when we incorporated more inclusive language after receiving feedback from people with disabilities. At General Assembly, we have a process of social witness where we put our principles into direct action. As your delegate, I had the privilege of voting to affirm 3 actions of immediate witness, AIWs, this year, and 1 statement of conscience. The actions of immediate witness let us as a faith respond quickly to global, national, and local concerns. And the statement of conscience has a 3-year process of study, reflection, and action. Over the next 3 years, our Unitarian Universalist Association will focus on the statement of conscience that we passed this year, titled Undoing Systemic White Supremacy, a Call to Prophetic Action. This includes action beyond our denomination and also internal work within our congregations to overcome the ways in which systemic white supremacy is woven into our group cultures, into interpersonal relationships, and individual ingrained biases. Some of the ways our fellowship is journeying towards this goal include offering anti-racist and inclusivity trainings, centering voices that are traditionally marginalized within our community, and supporting the Mountaintop, a ministry for BIPOC UUs in the Front Range and beyond. One action of immediate witness is titled Stop Voter Suppression and Partner for Voting Rights and a Multiracial Democracy. And the Ware lecture at this year at General Assembly was on this very topic. Activists and authors Stacey Abrams and Desmond Meade spoke passionately and humbly about their work to ensure every American has a voice in our elections. Desmond Meade's heartfelt sharing of his struggle to regain the right to vote was especially touching and inspiring. The next action of immediate witness, called the COVID-19 Pandemic, Justice, Healing, Courage, takes lessons learned from this pandemic and affirms our commitment to create a healthcare system that is accessible, comprehensive, equitable, and culturally acceptable. It also supports labor reform so all workers may receive adequate protection, compensation, and representation. The third action of immediate witness is defend and advocate with transgender, non-binary, and intersex communities. It encourages us UUs to support local and national efforts for gender identity protections that remove barriers and binaries. For example, driver's licenses shouldn't need a gender marker. And here are some specific ways within our congregation we can show our support of trans, non-binary, and intersex people. First, respect all people's self-identified names and pronouns. Secondly, have accessible all gender restrooms, which we do in our new building. And use inclusive language in all communications. There will be a breakout room after the service to go into more details of the actions of immediate witness and statement of conscience. It is time to fulfill our role as spiritual refuge for BIPOC, trans, non-binary, and intersex UUs, and help make our congregation a truly welcoming place.
Our Unitarian Universalist faith tradition is undertaking institutional and cultural change to create healing, liberationist ways of being together. This call to move beyond radical welcome, those warm, fuzzy feelings I get every time I hear our welcoming words in our services. This call to move beyond the welcome, that insists that we spiritually examine why only certain people find themselves comfortable in our pews. When we move beyond virtues of hospitality by centering liberation, we also have a chance to embrace a more inclusive and accurate history of our faith. As a UU, I often pride myself on circling round for justice, and that energy of thousands of willing hands were so contagious for me at General Assembly this year. My heart burst with gratitude and inspiration to be part of a living tradition that cares so deeply and with such conviction to do the work of justice making and siding with love. It certainly feels really, really good. And it wasn't long until I found myself being invited to circle around for healing. In a pandemic year that carries tremendous trauma and profound loss, I was deeply humbled to discover another type of healing space at General Assembly. The kind of space that, when in covenant, circles round to hold truthfulness, even when in tension and in despair. The kind of healing place that requires a spiritual excavation to repair. During one of the heavily agendaed business meetings, UU circle around for healing by making space to lament for the announced confirmation of hundreds of unmarked Indigenous graves in Saskatchewan, Canada, at the site of a former residential school run by the Roman Catholic Church. In that same space, it was there that I came to first understand how, as Unitarian Universalists, we are not exempt from the violent and devastating legacies of Christian discovery and white supremacy. In 1886, the American Unitarian Association established the Montana Industrial School for Indians on a Crow reservation near Custer Station on the Big Horn River. After over a decade of operations to, quote, educate and assimilate Native children, the school closed. And not because of any moral objections, but because the federal government withdrew the annual subsidy for each child. The school simply ran out of money. And in the 1980s, UU World magazine published a story about this school, bragging how it's such a good example of how Unitarians have shown, quote, hospitality towards the Indigenous community. This very uncomfortable and disturbing piece of UU history, all of that sort of toppled that self-righteous intellectual scaffolding that I sometimes use as a UU, believing that we are different or not like them because we're so radically welcome. And I was challenged to humbly atone for my own ignorance and lament for the ways that we as a faith tradition have participated in systematic oppression and still today collectively fall short. So, as our faith does the work to reclaim accounts of history by centering voices on the margins, I find myself needing trustworthy healing spaces that can attend to those pains, both past but also present, in a deeply communal way. These rituals and liturgies They are necessary if we are to move fully towards a more beloved community. For its healing work that can tend to the transformative, deep change that can translate our welcoming words of hospitality into an embodied language of collective liberation that faithfully can respond to the pains of the world we have inherited to make us all truly more free. So when we circle around for faithful justice making, circling around in healing is part of the whole and holy work of creating and sustaining a liberating Unitarian Universalism. And beloveds, when I find myself in such healing places, I deeply hope that I see you there. Perhaps others will hear us singing the lyric, "Love will guide us through the hard night." And maybe, just maybe, they will even join in. When we engage in the healing work that can change the world with love, we also need courage. Another delegate from Boulder Valley was Mary Gibb. Mary will be sharing with us how she circled around for courage at this year's General Assembly.
Hi, my name is Mary Gibb, and I'll introduce myself as we were requested to do at General Assembly. I'm a white, cisgendered female with gray hair and glasses, and I'm wearing a flowered shirt, and I was born in the middle of the last century, and I'm sitting in a flower garden speaking to you today. All through GA, the words of our popular hymn, "Love Will Guide Us," kept going through my mind, particularly the line in the second verse, "If you cannot speak before thousands." But there, in a virtual platform, courageous people who wouldn't or couldn't ordinarily speak before thousands had exactly the opportunity to do so. Here are some of the words and ideas that stood out for me. In the workshop, Facing Down Classism to Liberate Our Faith Communities, I heard stories from courageous people who stayed with their UU communities despite being reminded through congregational programs and activities that their socioeconomic situation wouldn't allow them to fully participate. And through sharing in breakout rooms, I heard creative solutions to these issues, and several people talked about the value of having frank discussions about class. In the workshop, Taking Up Space, Fat Liberation, and UU, I heard stories of painful rejections in UU circles because of fat prejudice expressed overtly or by omission. By the way, fat was the presenter's chosen word for describing themselves. Among other stories, a person who works with congregations in their preparation for calling a new minister recounted how she had heard, "We don't want a fat minister," more than a few times. Ministers related the microaggressions they suffered by inhabiting a fat body, how seating is arranged in a small room, how the dais is set up to prevent a fat body from moving around gracefully, and the kinds of chairs available are all considerations for our congregation as we consider being as welcome as possible. Reverend Leslie Takahashi, in her workshop, Trauma and the Spirit, Resources for Communities Today, said that we are seeing said that we are seeing years of trauma emerging in our congregations after the last really tough 6 years. I learned that we need to recognize trauma as holding trauma is complex, and we must work together to heal from it, to learn to soothe ourselves and those who we are with. Some takeaways were the encouragement to name that this is what happened and to ask the question, what's possible now? And because during the pandemic, I miss the joy of eating food with people other than my family. The phrase I particularly liked was, "Do not discount the importance of a bagel." Courageous UUs are learning to talk about their wounds and their wounding with the hope of creating a welcoming world. It takes courage to speak before thousands, to tell your story, and as the song says, to give from deep within you, to change the world with your love.
Leading with love. And now we extinguish our chalice, but not the warmth of love, the light of truth, nor the energy of action. These we carry in our hearts until we meet again. So let us go forth, circling round for justice, healing, and courage, advancing our Unitarian Universalist values in the world. May we lead with love. And now, as promised, here are our announcements about upcoming events and today's breakout rooms. Catherine Partridge and Kelly Lojuditse will be sharing more details about the adopted statement of conscience and those actions of immediate witness from the 2021 General Assembly. You are warmly invited to join them in the Chat with Service Leaders breakout room to hear more. And if you have any questions about the process of moving back toward in-person services and events at the fellowship, or if you'd like to help with the process, after the service right now, members of our opening task force are available in a breakout room to answer your questions and offer ways to help. There will be another Q&A session on July 25th if you can't make today's. And we have covenant groups starting. Are you interested in joining one? These are intentionally formed small groups whose members meet regularly, usually monthly, to explore their spiritual journeys. New groups are forming this fall for the upcoming church year, and there may be openings in existing groups. So if you are interested, please contact Mary Headley or Jean Nuttall. Their contact information is in the chat window. May you all have a blessed week.